Hi, friends. I'm Scott Giles, and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnotic coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences in general. If you'd like to know more about my professional work, and I hope you do, or sign up for my free e-newsletter, Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Well, today I want to talk about how any of us can get some control over our mental and emotional regulation. To start this off, I want to pass on a saying by a time management guru who I think highly of. His name is David Allen, and his system of time and task management is called Getting Things Done. The saying that I want to lift up is when he says, "Your brain does not have a brain. You have to be smarter than your brain." Now, what he means by that is our brain has evolved certain biological capacities, and in the past, they have served us well. But in our present life, we have to compensate for the downside of those capacities. And in this, I think he is spot on. Our brain evolved to help us live and reproduce. It evolved to keep us safe, not to make us happy or productive. It has evolved all sorts of ways to keep us safe, but chief among them is the tendency to exaggerate anything negative, because that makes us cautious, and cautious creatures tend to live longer. But this also means that in our modern society, we find ourselves having to navigate situations that are way more complicated than our brain is evolved to handle. The result is that we can feel fearful, panicky, upset, overwhelmed, confused, and a long list of other feelings that are not positive. We get locked into those states of brain activity because our brain is hardwired to make that lock-in easy. The good news is that there is something you can do about that. The technique comes out of the discipline called positive psychology. That's the area of inquiry about how normal people can feel good. One of the concepts from that field is something called the levers of feeling, controls like levers or dials. There are actually mental tools you can use to change what your brain is doing. You don't have to passively accept its default state that arises from your evolutionary background. Another name I've heard for these mental tools, a name I sort of like, is secret shifters. That is, things you can do without the awareness of others that function like a brain for your brain to take control. Now, to create these tools requires some work. If you ask anyone to give you a list of the wrongs and the bad things done to them, everyone will be able to give you a long list. The brain remembers that stuff well. However, if you ask for a list of the good things that have happened, most people will come up with a list, but it will be shorter and it will take longer because the brain doesn't remember that stuff as well. But that short list is exactly what you need to create. Sit down with a pad or an open note and come up with a list of the good stuff. It will take some time, but you can do it. Then, go through that list and write a short paragraph about the major incidents. Make it as real for your memory as you can. For example, I remember delivering a paper when I was a grad student in philosophy. It was a piece of my finest work. When I finished, there was a round of applause. Well, that usually doesn't happen to a grad student presenting a paper, but it happened to me. So I fill out the memory. I can tell you the date. I can tell you the weather that was visible through the window of the seminar room. I can recall how the lectern felt under my hand. I can really, and maybe I'm actually imagining it, but I think I can recall the sound of the pages of the typed paper as I moved from page to page. I can remember hearing the applause. I can recall how I felt, the feeling I had in the pit of my gut, and the struggle I had to take it in stride and not put a big grin on my face. You do something like this for every positive recollection you have, at least the major ones. Then you label them for easier recall. You can even associate pictures, graphics, or other things to help the work. The one I just mentioned is my first philosophy lecture. And I have an image of a bust of Socrates that I have in my mind, which helps me recover that memory. When I want to feel strong and appreciated, I imagine the bust of Socrates and the feelings and images I had around that philosophy lecture. I've got stories like this about the first board I broke as a martial artist, the first girl who kissed me, when I got my doctorate with highest distinction and they put a special hood on me as I stood there in my academic robe. I've got all of those. I remember the first paycheck I got, the first raise I got. So when I'm in a mental or emotional place that doesn't serve me well, I reach out to one of my secret shifters, a vivid memory that I've cultivated that will cause my brain to reset itself and come up with a reflection that will provide balance. Now, once you've done the work of creating your secret shifters, they pay an enormous return. Instead of being reactive, you have a measure of control over what your mind is up to. Always remember, your brain doesn't have a brain. You have to be smarter than your brain. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my work and my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through email, my website, or my Patreon channel. Have a great week.